I pledge allegiance to the flag of
Allegiance
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I didn't hear anybody trying to
Well,
say
did you
this.
notice my new technique now is to mute myself so that I don't compete with you?
Okay, good. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes dated November 23rd, 2020, December 2nd, 2020 for a special meeting, and December 10th, 2020 for a special meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any comments or amendments to those? No? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Okay, great. All right. Moving on to my update, which I think my thing is labeled wrong. I meant to have this not continued, but I'll just do it real quick. Most of this was in my update on Friday that I sent out to the community. We are seeing a slight uptick here in Madison with the kind of post-Thanksgiving surge that they were predicting. We went from about 30 active cases where we had hovered for several weeks to 43. This was on Friday. Unfortunately, we had another fatality in town, and one resident has been hospitalized, was hospitalized on Friday. So we're continuing to see, a little bit of an uptick here. And, as we enter the holiday season, we just want to remind the public once again to please exercise as much caution as you can. And the Hammonasset COVID-19 test site has been, I think, running smoothly and efficiently and being used. It's open 7 days a week, and I know we've been putting a lot of communication to the town about the success of the location and the hours. And you can go online to register and do a form. You don't have to have an appointment, and it doesn't cost anything. So it's handy having that accessible for the community. Town Hall is continuing on a staggered shift basis. So if people drive by Town Hall and don't see as many cars, we're kind of rotating, having people work remote when they can, and having people come in to serve the public. So there shouldn't be any disruption of service, but once again, we're just trying to manage staff. We've had some staff members test positive, and we want to continue to kind of minimize exposure to other employees. So we're doing a staggered shift, kind of like what the schools have been doing with cohorts. So that will continue through the holidays, and then we'll make a decision about if we have everybody back after January or if we continue with the staggered shift through mid-January. Schools remain open. K through 8 is 5 days a week in person, and Daniel Hand had been remote, and they went back to a hybrid schedule last week. So, and that is hopefully will continue through the school break. The town is working, the department, our health director is working with DPH on a vaccination plan. Vaccines are expected this week in Connecticut. I know some of the news reports said even Monday it would start. And, many of you might have seen there's a phasing plan that the governor's launched. Phase 1 is going to be hospitals, workers, and healthcare providers. Nursing homes, which is going to be handled by CVS and Walgreens, I guess. I think it's on site at the nursing homes, but they're going to be administering it. And then medical first responders. So our EMS workers will be getting vaccinated as well through the hospitals. So I think it includes EMTs as well. And so some of the some of the members of our fire department will also be receiving the vaccine, and that will be handled through hospitals. In mid-January, we will start critical workforce. And I don't know the full definition yet of critical workforce, but Madison is actually a point of distribution for our region. There'll be one in Branford, I guess, and then one here. And we always use the town gym. We've done other kind of vaccination programs in the town gym. And that will be launched in mid-January, and more details will be coming on that. And this is just I think a lot of people have already seen that this has been put out, kind of highlights the phasing. And I think some of the details are still getting worked out about how the rest of 1B would work out in terms of adults over 65, other congregate settings, and then phase 2. So this is going to be updated and revised, and then we will come out with a more detailed plan once, this gets underway. But the important thing is they're focusing on the next, 4 to 6 weeks, really. And how that was going to be handled. So that is it for my update for the town. And so I will turn it over to if any board members have any comments.
Peggy, one quick comment on this distribution. We're supplying the facility of the town gym. This vaccination program is not an element of town government. Is that correct?
Well, our health department is involved in organizing it, but it's not like we're going to be the vaccinators going forward. No, it's all
Okay.
for the piece that we're doing at the town gym. Our health director is organizing it, and then I don't know who's going to be administering it. That actually, I guess I think we can come back and provide more detail on that. I'm going to send that out in my weekly update. But in terms of other resources, I think this is going to be a regional effort where each town is going to contribute people to actually give the vaccination.
I see.
And
Peggy, do I understand correctly? We won't be making the rules about the actual order of vaccinations. That's up to the governor?
No, that's all under the governor. And we're just going to be kind of following whatever the rules that are laid out by the governor's office and then the region. So we won't be doing something independent outside of the region at all.
Thank you.
Yep. I guess any more questions on that? I can turn that off for selectmen comments, liaison reports. No? Okay.
I can do a couple. Not long, I promise. So real quick for Madison Youth and Family Services. So I know many of them are actually on for a later topic on the agenda, but we have a new chair for our board for Madison Youth and Family Services, which is David Buller. So congratulations to David. He was voted in last week. CIP, Aaron and I have been attending CIP meetings, and last week we focused on emergency services. So, police came in, fire came in, and we talked about specific capital improvement projects related to emergency services. And then our library board of directors met, and I did get an update. A lot of the local libraries in the area are actually closing as a result of COVID. And from the director, she basically told me that there are three main reasons why some libraries are choosing to close. One, the infection rates specific to their town, guidance from their local health director. Two, square footage that doesn't allow for adequate distancing. And three, staff availability. Some libraries are having the same issues at schools as well. We've been very fortunate in Madison on all these accounts that there's, standing with very strict guidelines, which are keeping our staff healthy, which is great news. And at this point, they've only had one retirement, and it looks like we're going to remain open, at least in the short term. So we're very lucky in Madison to have the protocols in place that we do. That's my update.
Okay, great.
I have a brief update.
Yep.
I have a brief update from the police department. The Madison Police Department once again subjected itself to a voluntary accreditation visit from the Commission on Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies. The visit took place a few weeks ago, and informally, Madison passed with very high colors, and will be officially recognized, I believe, in March at a national convention. And once again, we remain one of the only police departments to receive accreditation for both the police department and the dispatch center.
Great. That's good news. I know I was part of that interviewing process. They interview all different parts of town government too when they do the accreditation renewal. And so I participated in that. So that's good to hear. Great. Thank you. All right. So we move on, and there was no one else, right? So let's move on to citizens' comments. Anybody have their hand raised, Lauren?
Yeah, John Brady, and I will allow him to talk. John, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me, Lauren?
Yep.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for taking time. This morning on your agenda, there is a proposal to amend the tax abatement for the volunteer firefighters. And those of you who don't know, Bill Carroll from Madison Hose and I have been working closely with members of the board as well as Lauren since last January to bring the abatement up to the allowable limits that the state has passed. And I would urge your favorable consideration of that request this morning.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody else? No?
No.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll be getting to that. Thank you, John. We'll be getting to that on the agenda in a few minutes. So, all right, next item on the agenda is a recognition for Neighbor to Neighbor for their continued support through the COVID-19 pandemic. So this isn't listed as a proclamation, I just realized, but we have a proclamation, right?
But so I will need someone to motion and second approving the proclamation.
Okay.
I've got the proclamation in front of me, Peggy, if you want me to read it.
Yeah, great. Okay,
I'll make the motion too.
And I'll second it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Whereas Neighbor to Neighbor is a community organization that aims to help neighbors in Madison stay out of crisis. And whereas Neighbor to Neighbor achieves this altruistic goal by funding oil, gas, or electric assistance, donating food and gas cards, providing camp scholarships for teens, organizing homebound delivery programs, providing personal items at the Madison Food Pantry, subsidizing lunch at the senior center, and more. And whereas Neighbor to Neighbor has made a mission of supporting residents through the COVID-19 pandemic by donating more than $50,000 to families in need of assistance due to the pandemic. Now, therefore, we, the members of this board, hereby unanimously acknowledge the continued contributions of Neighbor to Neighbor in combating crisis within the Madison community, done this 14th day of December 2020 in the town of Madison, Connecticut.
Great. Thank you so much for reading that. Well, discussion is, I know we have Scott Cochran here, so I don't know, Scott, if you want to talk, but we've obviously had Neighbor to Neighbor a number of times before this board, accepting very generous contributions that they've made throughout. Particularly, I know historically they've always been helpful and a great asset, but particularly during COVID, they have really stepped up and been a huge resource for members of the community during a difficult time. So I'll let Scott maybe speak a little bit more about all they've done for us and why we're here to just, proclaim them a great asset to our community. So
yeah, and I'll just start by saying, so the proclamation reported more than $50,000. So that number is actually $67,100 to date of assistance directly for COVID relief. And so that's assistance that goes directly to residents impacted by COVID. And it won't be the last donation. I was talking to Lori Heflin late last week. So the last donation would have rounded us out around 70 grand in assistance. And so as we're approaching that last, that mile marker for us, as we've done several times, we've reached out and said, how do you want to handle this? Do you want to continue to run this program? As we always do, we work very closely with them around anything that we're doing. And Lori indicated that she's going to be looking into more funding to come for our COVID impact program. So I'll be back probably in a couple of weeks asking for you to approve another donation. So, what can you say? It's amazing what these folks have done at Neighbor to Neighbor. And again, it reflects the enormous generosity of our community. So these are, they've been around for a long time. They've helped us on numerous social services situations and issues, whether it's one family or looking at running a program. So just thank you and really appreciate Board of Selectmen and the town of Madison officials recognizing Neighbor to Neighbor in this way.
Great, thank you. And I know there's a number of members right here.
Yes.
Would you want to introduce them to the public?
Yeah, it's hard for me to see who's on. I think I saw Lori Heflin.
Yep.
Lori, if you're there, if you can unmute yourself. Okay, so is anyone from Neighbor to Neighbor able to unmute themselves? Colleen,
Oh, I
see
think
you.
I did it.
Oh,
Did I
okay.
do it?
There she goes.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate the recognition. It is our mission, so we're doing what we're supposed to do, and we are happy that to be recognized. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other members want to say a word? Or I know there's a number of names on here, so but I think that we're just very grateful. And I don't know if any board members want to weigh in.
No, I mean, I think
Yeah,
the work continues to be astonishing, and I think as a community, this is a very, very small token of our appreciation.
I mean, this to me represents the best of our community. We are beyond appreciative of everything that you folks at Neighbor to Neighbor are doing during this crazy time in our town and our community. So thank you so much for all that you're doing and continue to do.
All right. Well, I guess, Al, did you want to say something? Did I interrupt you? I was going to say.
I was just wondering whether anybody from Neighbor to Neighbor might want to put in a little plug for end of the year donations. I assume that the public is invited to make a donation to Neighbor at any time, but especially at this time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Al. That's how we're funded, by the community. And as Scott said, what we're able to do is a reflection of the concern of the community for our neighbors. And so we do year-round accept donations, and we can accept them at the Madison Foundation website for Neighbor to Neighbor. It has to be specifically included in a donation that it goes to Neighbor to Neighbor. And it can be mailed to Post Office Box 446, Neighbor to Neighbor in Madison. So thank you. Yeah.
All right, great. And we look forward to seeing you again for the next donation acceptance. So I guess anybody else? No? So we have to vote. I forgot, right? So I guess how do you accept this proclamation, or no? We vote in favor of this proclamation. All say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Thank you so much. And Lauren will get for your office a signed copy of the proclamation
Thank you.
with all the board members signing it. So, and thank you again for all your hard work. And we're very grateful to have that access here for our community. So, okay, moving on. I know we got quite a few things on our agenda this morning. Number 7 is discuss and take action to approve authorizing Madison EMS to expend funds not to exceed $40,000 to purchase a cardiac monitor and accessories as approved in the capital improvement program.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right. And just a real quick overview. This is something that's already been approved. So if you want to just do a quick overview, Chris.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So this will be replacing a 14-year-old cardiac monitor. That's a piece of equipment that we use on almost every call. It measures your blood pressure. It can take a picture of your heart, do an EKG, take your pulse rate. So it's used by our paramedics and often by our EMTs as well. And we were able to secure a $5,000 trade-in, which was great for the older piece of equipment. Like I said, that's 14 years old. I thought that was pretty good given how expensive everything is with fire and EMS equipment. So like I said, it's already been approved in CIP, so we're just going through the process to spend the funds.
Okay.
If there's any questions, happy to take any questions. I have if you want to see a picture of it, I can attempt to share my screen and see if that works. If you want me to try that.
Sure.
So this is, can everyone see that
Yeah.
on the screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is the device itself. And so this is all the different measurements on the screen. There, the top is like the pulse rate, and then the oxygen saturation rate, and then some other pictures are the heart itself, what it would look like that the paramedic would see. And so it's a very expensive piece of equipment, but a very important one that we use.
Great. I mean, I think we all, appreciate having those things available. So, all right. Well, I guess just all in favor of approving the motion as written, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Thank you so much, Chris. And, appreciate the diligence in getting a trade in as well. So I wouldn't have thought those things would be traded in, but that's great.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
Thanks, Chris.
Number 8 on the agenda, discuss and take action to approve establishing the ad hoc 2021 Charter Revision Committee. And I will just real quickly put back up we kind of had all, agreed on a charge for the, here we go. Now I got to do this and then I got to do that. And this was just the charge. I think it was the first meeting in November. We kind of had all agreed that we were comfortable with the language here. And I think today is just by formally adopting this charge, we're essentially establishing the commission. And then we would have to go forward and start interviewing applicants. And we've already had quite a few applicants. I think the idea was we would like to, by Friday, have all applications received for people that are interested in serving on the commission. And maybe we'll put a note out today, just reminding folks that the deadline would be Friday and that the board would start doing interviews basically over the next couple of weeks with applicants. And then according to the timeline, right, Lauren, we have to basically seat the commission within 30 days, right? Once we vote on this. So,
Correct.
okay, good. So we should be able to manage that, I think. So we would do that in our January meeting. So can I get a motion to approve establishing the ad hoc 2021 Charter Revision Commission?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion?
I do have one thing. So in here, we are charging the commission to consider recommendations from the board, and I think that's a great idea. I think we should probably follow through as a board and have a discussion about what we think those recommendations are so that we can transmit them to the commission in some formal way. So we have time to do that. I'm just pointing out that that probably should be on our to-do list.
Yeah, good point. I think before, had that been done more through interviews of the board members? Did in previous charter commissions, was that done like as a formal recommendation?
My memory is we were individually, those of us that wanted to be were individually interviewed. I don't think we as a board ever stated positions.
So in the 2015 Charter Revision Commission, actually, it was a memo that came directly from Fillmore. So it was to the committee from him, but Fillmore met individually as well with each of the selectmen and drafted a memo that was representative of the entire board's recommendations.
Okay, so it was not a formal voted thing. It was more of a memo based on conversations and suggestions.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so that's good to know. I think that makes sense. So we can certainly do that. So we'll plan on doing that, and that's not within any specific timeline, right? It's just to provide that in a reasonable amount of time. But we should probably try to get that going. So I'll plan on doing that in January, is having discussions with each board member. And in the meantime, think about what things you want done and changed, and maybe submit them in advance. That would be great if each board member could think through that. Any other comments?
Yeah, maybe, so maybe we should just say, consider recommendations from the members of the Board of Selectmen. Because I think is written, it does sound like it's some sort of formal recommendation that we're all coming together and making.
Okay, so
Just for clarity.
Okay. So from the members.
So you're actually now going to need to motion to open
amendment.
the agenda and create a new item, and then amend the charge that you approved in November.
So, and before we go through all of that.
Well, we never approved this though, Lauren. We just talked about it. We didn't vote on the charge. So we didn't vote because that would have launched the committee. Did we vote on the charge?
I don't think
You
so.
voted, I'm fairly certain that yes, we voted on the charge. It does not launch the committee to create a charge. You actually have to establish and empower the committee. So I am looking that up right now, but if you guys want to continue, and Bruce, what were you saying?
I'm just going to suggest that we leave the language the way it is, and that as a board, we have a discussion about the topics that we think the commission should consider, and then just transmit the result of that discussion. Rather than having Peggy interview each of us separately, we just talk about it as a group and not change the language.
Bruce, I like your idea. What's happened in the past, however, is that members of the Board of Selectmen have had their own individual opinions, and there were some things we just could not agree on. And so
I think that in the public hearing and public meetings that the commission is going to have by statute, we as individual members of the community, which is what we are when we're not Board of Selectmen meetings, can communicate those individual desires.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think too, Al and Bruce, on this topic, I think we could give the committee sort of areas to focus on,
Yes.
not necessarily specific opinions of how we think the answer should result.
I think you're right, Scott. We can
I
identify.
think we already know
areas.
what those are, is my guess.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also that really, the board doesn't have to come to a joint conclusion, right? It's more about just hearing the different thinking of the board in a public setting. Is that what you're advocating for, Bruce? That we would have this discussion in public?
So I'm expecting there are actually probably quite a few things that we as a board would agree on.
Yeah, but I don't
I
know if
agree.
we would want to vote
Probably.
on that, though. We would just more have a discussion and there would be consensus, but not
And
voting.
that's fine. I mean, how formal or informal it is, I think there is value in this board just talking through in a public setting some of our hopes. We will distill that down into a few recommendations, and it can be by consensus or by vote. I'm not really concerned with that. And then if I have an idea that you all don't agree with, I'll put my hand up in a public meeting and say, hey folks, I think you need to consider this. And I'm bringing this to you as a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder too if the word, and I'm not suggesting that we change it, but the word recommendations here may be causing us a little bit of angst, in the sense that I think we would provide the committee or the commission with kind of areas to focus on, not necessarily specific recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the commission is going to be able to consider or not anything that we have to say and bring back to us what they feel is right. There's nothing we can do to obligate them to a particular course of action. And I think the word consider acknowledges that we're not trying to force anybody's hand in this.
I agree, Bruce.
So, Aaron, are you okay if we eliminate the amendment so we don't have to Lauren, did you confirm, did we vote before?
Yeah,
or-
we did. I just confirmed it.
November
Okay.
9th.
Okay, all right. So we'll go back to the original language, which was from the recommendations and then we will plan on having, I think this is going to be a lengthy discussion. So I think we might even want to have a special meeting focusing on this, rather than trying to put it in a, I mean, there's a lot of, like, as you said, Bruce, I think there's a lot of stuff, that little common sense stuff that needs to be fixed, right? And I think going through this pandemic, we've learned that too. There's some things, just practical things that need to change. But then there's going to be some bigger picture philosophical things that we might not all agree on. So, all right. Well, I guess then from that, if we leave the charge the same, then I guess we're still in discussion. But if everybody's comfortable, we'll just vote to establish the commission. Okay. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, and we will plan on then having that type of discussion meeting, January timeframe or February timeframe. Okay, let's go back to, what am I doing here? Number 9, discuss and take action to approve reappointments for the terms ending January 2025. So I would like to amend this motion. So do we do that first?
You can actually do 2 motions. You can do a motion to table the 2 members that we are going to table to your next meeting, and then a motion to approve the remainder of the list.
Okay, well, we can just table them then, because I think it's just
Yep.
more formality of getting
Yep.
whether or not the people are, so, okay, so I would like to make a motion to table the reappointments for terms ending January 1st, 2025 of Timothy Casey from the Coastal Resiliency Commission and Ron Hick from the Energy and Efficiency Committee.
I
So
may
we have
have
to
one
vote.
more.
Yep.
I may have one more name to add to the tabling. I'm sorry I didn't discover this earlier, but under the Police Retirement Committee, the name of Richard Nace appears. And
Al,
yes,
that agenda was amended, so you're looking at the old agenda. I amended that at 5:30 p.m. Thursday night. So you got a new agenda in your email and it was fixed. He's actually on the Rockland Preserve Committee and it's correct in the minutes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Take and forth, okay?
So I'll second or move or whatever you need on the tabling.
Okay, so the discussion, so I don't have to read all this, right? We just made a motion.
We just had to,
table
we
this.
just had to vote on the table.
Okay, so all in favor of tabling those names that were listed on the reappointment list, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. And then do we approve the rest?
Yep.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the reappointments for the terms ending January 2025, Borough Park Advisory Committee, Laura Becker and James Henneberry, Ruth Ann Thierry, Kristen Wilderman, Beach and Rec Commission, Rob Card, Mary Patricia Nardino, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Leanne Hurdle, Bruce Bevy, Blight Appeals Committee, Niels Gillinston, Joe Mako, Coastal Resiliency Commission Executive Member, David Clark and Walter Welsh, Coastal Resiliency Committee, Joe Mako, Gregory McCool, Marilyn Shaw, Energy and Efficiency Committee, Francis Polaro, Guy Manino, Police Retirement Committee, James Madison, Rockland Preserve Committee, Tim Burton, Richard Nace, and Joseph Oslander, Shellfish Commission, David Newton, Eric Dahl, Youth and Family Services Board, Kristen Kilburn, John Rogers, Sarah Snyder. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, moving on to number 10, discuss and take action to approve reappointments for terms ending January 21st, 2026. Historic District Commission, Eric Berg.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Okay, number 11, a motion to approve the following appointments. And I'd like to amend this motion. I want to make 2 amendments, actually. Amend this motion as presented to the agenda to appoint Shannon Lewis to the Coastal Resiliency Commission Executive Member for a term to expire January 1st, 2025. And I'd also like to amend it to appoint Kevin Schroeder to be the Board of Selectmen Member of the Public for the 2021-2022 CIP Committee. Was the
So moved.
amendment?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All
Need to
in
read these.
favor?
We don't need to read these names off, do we?
Well, this is just the amendment. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And then I guess I could just do it as per minute. So now can we have a motion to approve the appointments as amendment in the motion? Do I need to read all these, Lauren? No. Okay. All right. I thought I did, but okay. All right. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, great. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Just kind of tidying that up, and just for the public's benefit, a lot of these boards and commissions do turnovers and they have terms expiring in January. So this is kind of a formality we have to go through at the end of every year. Moving on to section number 12, discussed proposed revision to Code of Ordinances, section 20-5, property tax exemption for volunteer firefighters. And so I will actually let Lauren, who's I know been working on this, give an overview.
Just moving in the 2 members of the fire departments as well, so they can speak to you also. But essentially, they came to us about a year ago and said that the state was allowing a better benefit than what the town is allowing, and asked us to consider if we would increase our benefit limit as well. When I started actually rewriting the ordinance over the summer, I went to the state's language and we found out that the state actually allows an even greater benefit than what they were proposing or what we had been offering. So our old ordinance, or the current ordinance that we're recommending that you change, says that we will give a credit of a certain dollar limit, and we weren't matching the state's dollar limit. So the new ordinance says that we will match the state's allowable benefit, and also that we will allow that benefit to be applied in different ways. So currently, we only offer the benefit to apply to tax liability to the town. So if you only owe taxes in the amount of $300, but your benefit is over $1,000, you don't get $1,000. You just get that $300 tax credit. So what the new ordinance proposes is that everyone will receive the ability to have that benefit either applied to their taxes or issued to them in a check. And this will allow also for some of the members that are older and are retirees that don't have a tax liability of the town to still receive the benefit. They have not been receiving any benefit for a number of years. So the increase in cost to the town is nominal. There aren't many people that would actually be eligible for more benefit than what they're currently receiving, but it will allow us to include everyone in being honored for their service to the town.
I think, I met with, I think it was John Brady, and when I probably in January about this, and I was kind of stunned to find out the, how minimal these benefits really are when you think about the amount of time and dedication that our volunteer fire departments do for our community. Not to mention the fact that we save a tremendous amount of costs by not having to have a professional volunteer or a professional fire department. So to me, anything to continue to incentivize and reward people who give so much to our community, I think is important. And so I thought this was a very reasonable request that they were making to change the property tax exemption. So I don't know if we want to invite in John, if you want to weigh in anymore, and I guess Angela or Doug Carroll, I'm guessing is
Bill Carroll.
Bill Carroll, sorry, Bill Carroll. If you could please join us both and just add a little bit of perspective on this, that would be great.
Thanks, Peggy. Yeah, basically, and Bill, please feel free to chime in at the same point. This is something that actually the legislation was passed by the state. There's 2 parts to this. And the first part of it was actually approved back in 2016, and the second part in 2019. So we're really just catching the town up with what the allowable maximum is by the state, the abatement. And one of the things that was crafted into this ordinance was that going forward, if the state does change that amount, the abatement would reflect whatever the state allows. And again, to your point, this is it's a little recompense to the folks that do give really an unbelievable amount of time, and it's in many cases it's a very dangerous amount of commitment that they make. So we certainly ask your favorable consideration for this moving forward.
Any other questions? I think this is just a discussion item today. So I think the plan is our next meeting, we would take action on this, right? Vote on this. But any more questions today? And then you can always email Lauren with additional information or questions you might have too after today's meeting. Anybody else? No?
Nope.
Okay, great. So thank you guys. And then we'll have this on the agenda in January, certainly. And like I said, I encourage any board members to reach out if they have any additional questions on this, and then we'll vote on it at the next meeting. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you so much. And thanks for all your
Thanks, John.
service.
Thanks,
We're
Bill.
gratefully appreciated, both of you guys. So, all right, great. So moving on to number 13. So we have to do the hearing before we take action on the actual changes?
Correct. So we'll do a hearing. It has to be in the evening per the charter. So the hearing has to be before your evening meeting in January. And then at that meeting, when the public hearing ends, then you will actually vote to approve the ordinance and make any changes that may come from the public hearing.
Right. Okay. So this is allowing the hearing before we actually vote on the air. Okay. Get it.
Correct.
Okay. So, all right. Can I get a motion to discuss and take action to approve calling a public hearing on Monday, January 25th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom to hear comment on the proposed revised Code of Ordinances, Section 20-5, property tax exemption for volunteer firefighters?
So moved.
Okay. Second. All right. Great. All right. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. So we got the hearing scheduled now too. So, and we know what meeting it's going to be on now. Number 14 is an update on reorganizations due to early retirement incentive program. So let me just real quickly, let's see, I think I have something on here to talk about. Okay. So the board had voted on in, let me get this thing up again. The board had voted on, I think it was in September, to move forward on an early retirement program for town employees. And basically the results, the board has had an opportunity to talk about this in depth in executive session, but I wanted to provide the public just a high level update at this stage. That out of the eligible employees, we have had a total of 6 employees accept the retirement packages, and based on their specific situations, people will be starting to retire in July 1st of 2021, which is the new fiscal year. What that has created is we have to make some then decisions about how we're going to replace those individuals that are retiring, and some of them are at a very senior level. They're at the director level. And so it kind of became an opportunity to really look back in terms of our organizational structure and how we wanted to, was there an opportunity to make any changes to how town government functions? And so I've been working closely with our HR director and a number of the employees involved, and we've kind of started talking about what is something that we might be able to do here to kind of change how town government functions, given we have some senior people retiring. And so one of the things that we're contemplating doing, and part of this is going to be going through the budgeting process, and also consulting with the different boards and commissions that are involved, including Beach and Rec Commission and Senior Services, is potentially combining Beach and Rec with Senior Services. And as we looked at those two groups, there's a lot of similarities in terms of what they do. They're serving different demographics, but they're providing very similar services. They're very customer service oriented and very programming oriented. And so we kind of created some goals about what we're trying to achieve by the merger of these two departments. And part of that is just operational efficiencies. Some of that is improving customer service. Some of that is creating just a broader scope for employees and creating different career paths for people. And some of that is just trying to realize some cost savings and save some money in town by doing things a little differently. So this is just kind of a high view of what our thinking is right now. We've had a number of discussions in executive session about this because it does involve people's jobs and situations. And the intention is we finalize things and work through this over the next month. In January, we would kind of roll out a more detailed overview of what the possible reorganization could look like. Because obviously this has to go through the budgeting process. It affects the budget, and we're doing that right now. But I just wanted to raise it for the public's benefit, because I'm sure many people have heard discussions about this. This is something we're thinking of doing. And, more details will be forthcoming about what this would look like, what would change and what didn't. And I think really for the day-to-day, consumer in Madison or resident in Madison, I think they'll just see a lot of good things come out of this. We're always trying to improve how we serve the community. And I think this is an opportunity to make some change happen and freshen things up and look at things in a different way. So I think really this will be more further discussion probably in January, as we kind of move through the budgeting process, and I can then share more details about that. So with that, that was just an update. I don't know if any board members want to weigh in, or we can save that for the fuller discussion in January. No? Okay. Okay, great. So moving on to number 15, tax abatements and refunds. And I can
move $4,540.76 in refunds.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Good. All right, number 16 is just a discussion item. The Our Lady of Mercy Preparatory Academy Year 2 lease extension renewal request. So we received notification formally from the OLM Prep Board that they're interested in extending their lease for one more year, which is part of the document. That would require an approval process. This board would have to recommend it, and then it would also go through the Board of Finance or town meeting. And I think this is question mark depending on where we are in the pandemic. Right now, we wouldn't, or if we can have a town meeting, which we're working on doing that, we might be able to actually have a town meeting, a virtual town meeting. I think, given where we are in the year, I know that they're eager to get a resolution, because this would basically be giving them from July 2021 to July 2022. And it'd be under the existing terms. It would just be extending it for one more year. So there wouldn't be any change in terms of the amount of rent paid or any other conditions in the lease. It would just extend the period. And so I think part of the, do we extend the lease or not? Part of this is going to be dependent upon where we feel we are in the other process that the Ad Hoc Island Committee is running right now about their recommendations about moving forward with final decisions for the building. And so I'm hopeful that they're going to be presenting to us in January. I know that they were still working on some things. Al, I don't know if you want to weigh in.
I think they're getting close to being able to present to us, and later in our agenda, we'll be looking at a timeline as to how we move forward.
Yeah, the timeline I sent out to the board is draft. And so I just wanted that as background. I don't know if we're prepared to present it to the public, but all the timeline is talking about is, if we move forward with some sort of RFP process, ultimately this has to go to referendum for the town. So there's going to be kind of a dictated timeline that we're going to have to follow. So before any decision can be made by the town, we're looking at probably next November at the earliest that we would be able to even have a referendum on this if everything went smoothly and there was, recommendations that came through and we successfully moved an option through the process. And the draft I sent out, I think we need to work up a little bit more. I think all of our board members should submit questions to Floyd about, because I think it's important so we understand when we're deciding on the lease, how is that going to impact, the process for ultimately the final decision for the property.
Can I just a follow-up question? So I understand, I think if I understand correctly, that committee is working on drafting an RFP. Is that okay? So when they came to us in September, the next steps were a financial analysis of options and a risk reward assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like we're sort of missing a step because we haven't really heard from them regarding what their analysis is of the options and what their ultimate recommendation is, based on everything that they've looked at. So is that, Al, I don't know, can we expect to see that in
Yes.
January? Okay.
Yes, that's what they've been working on. And Erin, I think the companion question is, when we send out the RFP, are we sending it out to only a targeted audience of what we think is the sort of the best use, or are we going to send it out to everybody and use the committee's analysis to evaluate the proposals when they come back? Well, I think I've confused you. Let me start over.
Yeah, maybe you could describe what the RFP a little bit, just if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
the committee has done an analysis of what they, and a ranking of what they think the possible uses of this property would be. And they will speak for themselves when they present.
Mhm.
But when we look at their analysis, is their analysis going to limit, are we going to choose to limit who we send the RFP to? Or are we going to send the RFP to everybody and then use the committee's analysis to evaluate the proposals as they come back? I think that's sort of a policy process question.
I mean, I think we're due for them to present to us in January. And, I'm hopeful we can have them on our first meeting agenda in January. I had hoped that they would just present this options analysis.
Yeah.
By now, I think the intention was in December, but I know that they've been working hard on a number of different things and just preferred to delay. So I think if we have on the agenda in the first meeting in January, where they can go through where they're kind of coming out. I don't think the RFP itself, because I think part of it is like, do you go to RFP and you say, anybody who wants to bid on this property, bid on the property and put your best foot forward? Or do you say, residential condo developers bid on this property, so how specific is the RFP going to be?
Yes.
I think those are things that we can help guide them a little bit once we have a better understanding of this analysis that they've done.
Well, that's why I feel like maybe, is it premature to be doing the RFP when we haven't had that conversation yet about what their analysis is and recommendations?
No, I agree. I think that they should come first and talk about where they are in their recommendations, and then talk about the fact that they're putting together this RFP, but it would be helpful for us to weigh in on where we want this to go.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think they're looking to that for us as well. But I think they're really, they're extremely thorough in what they're doing. I know they've been spending, a lot on how to do this RFP, getting examples and everything else. But obviously some of the core language of that really needs to be guided by the board, right? They can make a recommendation, but we need to ultimately give them some guidance. So I'm thinking what we do is have at our next meeting, them come back with the analysis, right? And then talk about where they are in the RFP and what questions they have, like what direction, how do they steer this, and then we can have a conversation about it. Does that make sense based on the meetings you've attended, Al, where they are?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then meanwhile, the lease, I think we need this conversation with the committee first before we do any kind of voting on the lease. And then maybe by early January also we'll have a little bit better understanding if we're going to actually have to hold a virtual town meeting, or not. So.
And the other thing too is that the facilities study draft is also coming out will be ready January 6th, I believe. So to the extent that has any bearing on it, I think we have to keep that in mind as well.
Will that be on the agenda as well, Peggy? Are we planning on that for the 6th meeting?
I don't think that was meant for, I think it's more that your committee is going to be seeing.
I know
it.
we're meeting, for sure.
Yeah,
but I'm assuming that they
I
would then come and present to the Board of Selectmen at some
They
point.
would be. I think it's the question is what you see in early January. Is that at a point where you want to present that to the board, right? So, because the stuff that I've seen so far is pretty rough. They're still refining data and putting information together. And so I think they're trying to get to a point where there's some more thoughtful recommendations that are there. And so I think your committee needs to meet, and then that can also feed in, hopefully in January, by the end of January, that would all be incorporated. So, so I think that, you know, I don't, you know, we need to hear from the committee first before we vote on the lease. Absolutely. I think we need to understand where they are and what they're coming out. The timeline that I had kind of sent around, like I said, was more to understand that even if we move forward very aggressively with whatever the committee recommended, the earliest we would likely see any kind of vote for the public would be next November. And that's assuming, I think this timeline talks about taking action on an RFP in January. So, but I haven't gone through in detail the timeline. So we can all look at it and submit questions, and then we can just talk more about that at the next meeting. And then maybe we target voting on the actual lease the end of January. So the second meeting in January, not the first meeting.
Or February.
Yeah, or February possibly. So, okay. Is that?
Yeah, I just want to throw out there. I mean, this is an agenda item to talk about the request on the lease, but it's surfaced a bunch of uncertainty around the work that the committee is doing, and I think we probably need to have another discussion about what is that work that's being done. I mean, it seems like they've drifted way off of their charge, and have moved into a recommendation and then a follow through on that recommendation. So not only are they recommending that we sell the property, but they're following through with the language of the RFP to do it. And I am reminded that we did a less formal, but a similar process with Academy, only to discover after the RFPs were received that we had misread the mood of the community quite significantly. So I'm worried that we're talking about taking action and not soliciting broader community input into it. So my point is simply, I think we need to have some more discussion about what's going on at Island and how we're going to make sure that we're getting the community involved.
But that discussion would happen in context of them coming back and presenting to us, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we need
that's
to
what
hear
I
what they're
think that
thinking
we're-
first.
Yeah, I think we're in
Right,
agreement that we
but-
need them to come forward first, and they're only making recommendations to us, right? We're ultimately going to be the ones that would decide.
Right,
know,
but if
what
the
that
delay in their
process looks like.
presentation is that they're working through the language of an RSP, I would say, stop that work and come to us with your recommendation.
Yeah.
We don't need to delay the process to give them time to write an RFP that we haven't asked for, don't even know that we want.
Well, I think they're just trying to be as diligent as possible
Yep.
and provide as much help and guidelines of their thinking to us, so that I don't think they're expecting us to just turn around and rubber stamp what they're doing. They're just trying to be helpful and pull as much information together as possible and say, here's what our recommendation is. Here's the process that you could go, that you could undertake. But I don't think there's a expectation that that's what we would have to do. But I think, to Aaron's point earlier, I think they need to come back first of all and tell us what their thinking is. We haven't had that step that when we they presented in early November, I think it was. They were going to come back in December, and then I think they just, preferred to wait. They're just doing some more work. So let's have them back in January at that first meeting, and then we can kind of go from there. And community input on any of this is going to be critical. We have to go through that public process, absolutely, especially anything that's going to go to referendum, right? So we'll I think, Al, just, as the liaison, just make sure that they have
Yep.
something to present. I know they've done tons of work. I just, I think they're trying to figure out what they would want to, how they would want to present this, or how the recommendation would come. I don't know. So we'll let them come to us in January. Okay. All right. I think number 17, discuss and take action to approve the formation of an ad hoc committee charged with the formation of an affordable housing plan as required by Section 8-30J of Connecticut General Statutes. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And second? I'll second it, I guess. Okay, great. And then so discussion, Dave had presented, this committee that we need to put forward, and then sent around a charge for that committee. And I actually sent around just some suggested additions to that charge. I just felt we needed to be a little bit more specific about a check-in with the committee. And so I had made some amendments yesterday and sent those around to the board. And so we're just here to talk about, what the charge would be, and then we can get the committee moving forward. So Dave, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no, it's probably, that discussion is probably more for the board than for me. The charge in terms of what they're producing is pretty clear. It's just an affordable housing plan. I guess the degree to which the board influences the timeline and the process and the goals and objectives is really a discussion for you guys. I don't want to weigh in too early on that.
Yeah, let me actually pull up in a minute.
I guess maybe the only thing I'll mention while you're pulling that up, Peggy, is we did get recommendations from both the Senior Commission and Youth and Family Services for participation. And so the Senior Commission met and they nominated Roz Fahey to kind of represent them. And Youth and Family Services met and they recommended Andrea Aaron. And they also offered that Christine DePetrio, or I'm sorry, I mispronounced her last name probably, could serve as an additional staff liaison to the group.
Okay, great. And I think the discussion had been that Aaron was going to be the Board of Selectmen representative, right, Aaron? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. No, that's great. So we have everybody covered. We just have to appoint, once we launch the committee, then in January, we need to appoint 3 public members. So once again, we'll be going out soliciting for volunteers to sit on these committees. And I'll share with you the amendments that I had sent around yesterday. Hold on. Oh, where is that? Here we go. Okay, there we go. And so basically the only changes I made were in red here, just to clarify that it's the Board of Selectmen that would select the members of the public. And then my just thought was, and I talked a little bit about this with Dave, is I don't think the board is, the purpose of this is more precisely what we were just talking about with the island thing. It's more of a check-in early on in the process to make sure that we agree with the timeline that they're working on. Because the way the charge is written, it just says till July 24th, 2020, which is a long time. So this is kind of, let's lay out a timeline and check in with the Board of Selectmen to make sure that we're comfortable with that timeline. And then secondly is just what their recommendation for the plan's preliminary goals and objectives. And I think, just so we have a general idea of what we're trying to accomplish here. And I think it's important that the board give that kind of guidance to this committee. They're going to go away and come up with their recommendations, but in a lot of the other charges, we've always kind of had some sort of, objectives or something. And I don't know enough about this. The statute doesn't really specify, there's no requirements for the plan, right? It just says you have to have a plan, right?
Yeah,
so I think that's so broad.
Yeah, just to increase affordable housing in the
right
community.
Right, and maybe that's our goal ultimately, right? That could be just a simple goal but I just felt like it was important to have some sort of earlier on to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page of what the expectation is going to be for the plan. And those were my amendments. And then Dave and I had already talked about being able to fund this out of our planning reserve, and we think we have adequate funds to do that. And so I don't know if there's any other issues, questions, people don't like the amendments, comments.
I think the amendments make sense to me.
Yeah, and I think captured in your 1A is the notion that their first order of business will be to outline the scope of work and how long they think it's going to take, and milestones along the way where they're going to check in with us regarding the work.
Yep.
Because this is probably going to be a 12 to 18 month process. It's going to be easy to lose track of this group if we don't structure a regular check-in.
Are we specifying in here, I'm not seeing it, but are we specifying how many people we're looking to put on this committee?
Yeah, well, the actual number I'd have to count up, but 1,
7.
2, 7, okay. So,
7 in addition to the ones that we just talked about, Roz Fahey,
No, 7
Andrea.
total. So yeah, there's 4 representatives from existing boards and commissions. So the idea is, you get a representative from that commission in a formal way. That person would then, liaison with that commission to draw broader input into the group. So there's 4 members that people sit on existing boards and commissions, and then 3 additional members of the public. And my thought is that the folks that are sitting on the commissions now would convene and we discuss how best to identify those 3 public members. I mean, I know of people that are heavily involved in affordable housing development that live in Madison. I'd like to talk to them to see if they'd be interested. They have an expertise in this area. So we may be, we may be able to fill it by virtue of people's experiences. And if we can't, then we'll figure out the best way to reach out to the general public to solicit interest in the process. Because ultimately what we want to do is we want to give you guys a recommendation of 3 people that we think are going to do an excellent job on this committee. And, I found 7 seems to be a workable number for a group. Getting a little bigger, I tossed around the idea 9, but it starts getting a little unwieldy after a period of time.
Yeah.
With respect to what Dave just indicated, if we're getting a number of applications from the public, I do think we need some kind of mechanism to sort through who's going to be recommended to the Board of Selectmen. And Peggy, I don't know whether selectmen need to be involved or whether we'll look to Dave to do that.
well, I thought that, like all we've done for all the other ad hoc, ultimately, we'd have 1 Democrat and 1 Republican from the board do interviews. But I think that we could have a first pass done by Dave and his team, because he has some people specifically that he thinks would be good candidates. So they could kind of go through that. And then if other members of the public want to submit an application, I think we should allow for that, and they could submit that as well. So there'll be some recommended by Dave and his people. And then I think the general public, if they want to submit an application, that could come. And then the group just makes a decision, a recommendation for those 3 seats.
Mm-hmm. Did I understand from Aaron that we've already received some applications? From Lauren, I'm sorry.
For this?
Yeah.
I don't think
maybe
that.
I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've determined all the existing members, the 4, and it's just the 3 public now that we would be having additional people, and then we would do interviews. Those 2 board members would then make a recommendation, then we vote on the whole committee, when we're ready. So I think if everybody's comfortable, we could go ahead and vote on approving the formation of the committee with the amendments to the proposal made by Dave for the charge of the committee, right?
Sounds good.
Move as amended.
All right.
Second.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay, great. All right, great. So there we go. We got that launched. I was trying to get as much done as I can by the end of the year, Dave. So we got that taken care of. Okay, so next order of business is number 18, is just a review by Dave Anderson of the land use project updates, because I know he had come to this board, I think back in the spring, had gone through just different things that were going on in town. And I thought it was worth kind of doing an end of year wrap up where we are in some of those projects.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll probably keep this a little brief compared to the last time I talked about this, but the few projects that we talked about last time I want to highlight. One was this property on the corner of the new road in the Hammonasset connector. The property owner had been in negotiations with a major biotech company in Connecticut to potentially locate their corporate headquarters there. And that got very close to happening. Unfortunately, they selected another location for their expansion. And the property owner I've met with him and his team on a couple other occasions, is continuing to pursue a development there. At the time, it looks like it may be kind of a commercial office complex, but he's put the brakes on a little bit, just the uncertainty of the office market right now due to COVID. So for the next couple months, he's probably just going to sit tight and kind of see how things shake out before he moves on that. But we will see a development proposal there in the future. It may not have the anchor tenant that it once did, but it still has the potential to be really positively impactful for the community. So that's a little bit on hold. Project that generated a lot of conversation in the community was the Marina project at 4 Boston Post Road, which is on the west end of town next to Guilford, across from Friends and Company. That project was approved. It was a small building with the Marina office and a small kind of restaurant type use. And then Marina slips, which the Marina slips had to get approval from both the DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. So those approvals are in place. The town then approved the kind of land use aspects of the proposal. The property owner and his family came to the conclusion that they weren't able to execute the project on their own. So they actually were in negotiations or within discussions trying to find partners. Ultimately, they put the property up for sale. So there's no immediate plans to pursue that development. I have not had a lot of solicitations of interest about it. So that's an approved project that at this point is not moving forward at this point. May in the future, just not currently. Another project on the other end of town is a little bit of a different story. So in July of 2018, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved a project called Marina Landing, which is at the very terminus of Cottage Road going towards Clinton. And the project was approved with basically 30,000 square feet of mixed use commercial space, retail office space, and 37 2-bedroom townhouse units. The property owner got that project approved with the intent to sell it. So it's been some time, but there actually has been an acquisition of that project by actually an individual that has recently moved to town. And so I met with them several weeks ago, and they're preparing some applications to resubmit to the Planning and Zoning Commission for some amendments to the approval, some what they consider improvements to the approval. And so that'll be going back before the Planning and Zoning Commission probably January, February timeframe. But that the fact that there's an actual purchase of that project is a big step forward. So we'll see something happening there, at least in terms of an application in the very near future. And
Dave,
then
how does that particular one impact the oyster company that's there?
So I've been talking to George quite a bit from Indian River Shellfish. The original application had a requirement that he be given permanent access to his little lot over there. I've already spoken to the new owner now of the project and also conveyed that is a requirement, but also conveyed that they should look to him as a potential partner. I mean, there's an idea to do kind of go back to what the original concept was and do a brew pub restaurant in that area. And so I've conveyed, put the two of them together, hopefully have some discussions, because I think that little shellfish operation down there has a potential to benefit a larger project. And then, then also for him to have access and reliable power and all these other things. So hopefully you'll see that development positively impacting with the shellfish.
Great, thanks.
That's the goal. And then another project that's been talked about quite a bit is the Jerry Davis and Davis Realty own the property next to the Hearth off of Bradley Road. I've been meeting with him and his engineer and his architect. They are again nearing submittal now to the Planning and Zoning Commission for, I think, what will account to a 30-unit apartment building, 18 2-bedroom units, 12, I believe, 1-bedroom units. And I think this is a project that the Planning and Zoning Commission has been talking about and kind of awaiting submittal on for quite some time. So it is coming forward now. It's no longer a discussion of a concept. It's actually an actual application, and we'll see that fairly soon. So that has, between the Marina Landing project and this project, that's an additional potentially 60 to 65 to 70, apartment units, potentially a little bit more in Madison. And, one of the things that when we talk about housing affordability, one of the things we don't talk about enough, I think, is housing diversity and trying to diversify the types of housing we have in town, regardless of whether they're deed restricted to be affordable or not. And, certainly adding rental opportunities in town, aside from just renting, over someone's garage, formal rental community, I think is a goal of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the goal of the Plan of Conservation and Development. So to the extent that we can add these, whether they're deed restricted or not, I think is a big plus for the community. And so I'm happy to see that moving forward. And then there's a few other projects that have been talked about in the background. What's going to happen with Barbary Hill Farm is a question still, because that property has been on the market. There's some interest there. They've had a conversation with the Planning and Zoning Commission about potentially subdividing that property. The Planning and Zoning Commission reiterated that they would be supportive of development on that property if it could help preserve the front as a farm or an agricultural type use. And so, the community, I think, benefits tremendously from having that farm, both from just an aesthetic quality as you're driving into town, but also, they contribute to the farmers market, and they've done children's educational program over the years. So I think everybody's still hopeful that we can come up with a solution there that continues to have Barbary Hill Farm, as part of Madison's future, but that's not at a point where there's a project to be discussed. Trying to think if there was any others that we talked about in the past. The other one that came up recently is a community conversation with Klein's golf range. Klein came to the Planning and Zoning Commission a little over a year ago with an idea that he may try to actually abandon the golf range and put in a large solar array there. And so the company that he was talking with came and gave a presentation to the commission. Commission asked some questions, wanted to see perhaps some renderings of what that facility might look like. And then we hadn't heard anything formal since then. There's been some chatter, I guess, on social media, and he posted something on their website about that they're still interested in pursuing that opportunity, but nothing formal has come forward yet. So I don't have anything further on that. And then there's a few other projects that have, one has been kind of stalled off of Brookside Lane off of Wall Street. There was I believe it was 9-unit apartment project approved there. That has not moved forward, but there's ongoing discussions about bringing that back for basically reapproval in order to bring the cost of the project down a little bit so they can secure financing to bring it forward. And then there is a little bit of discussion about a potential project on the vacant property basically adjacent to Bradley and Wall that wraps back up to Railroad Avenue, but nothing has come forward on that.
Are you finding, I'm just curious, Dave, has the pandemic caused some of these projects to get put on hold just because of the economic uncertainty, or do you think that?
Well, a little bit of kind of goes both ways. Some folks are seeing a need to advance the projects sooner because obviously there's more of an interest in moving to the suburbs and experiencing the lifestyle we have out here. So there's been a positive impact, I think, to the residential market as a result of that. So some of these projects have moved forward. The ones that were stalled, to be honest, were stalled prior to the pandemic. And so to the extent that the pandemic has contributed them to being stalled even longer, it's difficult to say. Certainly, there is a lot of uncertainty financially for a lot of people. And so I don't think anybody can predict what 6 months and a year is going to look like from now. I'm hopeful that people realizing the lifestyle benefits of Madison doesn't go away, regardless of when there's a vaccine.
Right.
And I think so. I think folks are moving forward with projects based on that assumption a little bit.
Well, I think of that new road property, because what had been contemplated was more of a commercial use, and I thought, think of all the empty office buildings, that are everywhere right now.
In that project, I think you're correct. I think there is a little bit of hesitation because that is still a question: are these major corporations in Hartford going to distribute their workforce in commercial spaces throughout the state? Are
Mhm.
people just going to be working from home and only checking into the office occasionally? I don't think anybody can give you that answer yet. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of uncertainty about that still.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions for Dave? No? Okay.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, there's a
Lot of
couple, and if you drive by, you can see now that the General's Residence project is under construction. There's first unit going up currently is framed, and so I think that's going to ultimately be a positive impact on that corner. Hopefully, it appears to be so.
All right, great. Well, thank you for the update. And then actually, the next item on the agenda is to move into executive session. Well, actually, I want to make a motion to move into executive session and invite Lauren Rhines and Dave Anderson into executive session. Can I get a second? Okay. All right. And just for the public's benefit, we just have to go and you will be put in a holding room. Is that the case, Lauren? I always forget how you're working this.
Yes, they'll be put into a room that just says that they were put on hold by the host.
Okay. All right, great. All right. So all in favor of moving to executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.